So to start this review off, let me just make one thing crystal clear right off the bat. I used to be a massive fan of Five Nights at Freddy's, so much so that I even made a YouTube channel dedicated to it over a decade ago called FNAF Person. So I think that alone makes me perfectly qualified to bring a thorough review for this movie. Eventually I did fall out of touch with the franchise though, and I haven't really liked their newer titles. I think Security Breach in particular is complete horseshit. However, I think we can all agree that FNAF 2 is still a certified banger to this day. So with the announcement of the Five Nights at Freddy's movie, I was interested to see how it would pan out, and what they would decide to do with the precious FNAF lore. So before I get into the story of the movie, just so you know, I will be spoiling it, as it's basically impossible to fully talk about a movie like this without spoiling it, so be warned. During the lead up to the movie's release, I must say I didn't really have high expectations. I was hoping the movie would go all in on the horror and gore, and try its hand in actually being scary, which would be great for the audience that originally played the games like me, who are obviously much older now. And it would be great to see elements like that which aren't really showcased properly in the games. But after seeing it was going to be 15 rated, I quickly realised that would most likely not be the case. However, I was also content with the movie being extremely goofy. I mean, let's face it, it would be a lot easier to make a funny and wacky Five Nights at Freddy's movie than one that's actually scary. But regardless, all I wanted was a movie that committed to one of those and ran with it, instead of playing it safe and doing a bit of both. But sadly, that's exactly what I ended up doing. In my opinion, the movie does have a pretty promising start. Begins with a main focus on horror and leaning on the mystery of the Freddy Fazbear Pizzeria, and of course the further backstory attached to it, but also gives us an interesting concept for the main character, as it slowly gives you insight on a recurring dream he's purposely having of losing his little brother to a mysterious man during his childhood. I wonder who that could be. But this also makes sense with his character motivations throughout the movie and the reason for him later working at the pizzeria in the first place. So in my opinion, all that is done really well and is a good idea that changes up the usual FNAF formula in a unique way, and also acts for a good line of communication between the main character and the animatronics, which wouldn't really work in any other context. I like the focus on Mike and his sister Abby as they try to make do in a bad situation, while his aunt is trying to get custody of Abby and using his recent incident at his latest job to do it. This motivates Mike to work anywhere he can to prove he can look after his little sister, and that's when Shaggy offers him the security guard job at the pizzeria. So after purposely going through the same dream over and over again to try and remember who his brother's kidnapper is, literally sleeping on the job first day at the pizzeria, he is then greeted by the ghosts of the dead children that are in the animatronics, who he then questions and gets hurt a bunch in the process in the dream world, which also transfers the same injuries to the real world. I don't know, man, just go with it, right? After that, a police officer called Vanessa comes knocking for absolutely no reason. She just starts talking about how she loved the pizzeria as a kid and helps bandage up Mike's injuries, in which Mike doesn't question the reason for her actually being there once. It's not like she's also a security guard that's employed there or anything. She's literally just a police officer. But anyway, eventually his whole subplot starts unfolding where it turns out that Aunt actually hired Mike's babysitter to spy on him and find anything they can use against him to get custody of his sister. Then when that fails, she resorts to the only other option, to trash his place of work in hopes that he gets fired. Pretty fair backup plan, I'd say. So she essentially sends a bunch of goons to start breaking shit in the pizzeria, and this is where the movie starts to finally get a bit gory and horror-esque, as the animatronics decide to attack them. You have some classic horror tropes used during some of these scenes, which I love, like the classic, oh there's a noise, better investigate, then the good old twist, oh there's nothing there, oh I must be hearing things, and then finishing it off with the, oh there was someone there, oh they're somewhere I didn't expect them to be, oh silly me. And how can we forget the good old, he's right behind me isn't he, when one of them is unknowingly hiding in a closet with Bonnie. Just all that good stuff. Even a babysitter ends up getting chopped in half. So at this point in the movie, I didn't even mind what I had seen so far. I've liked the start and the backstory of the main character and the whole setup of the plot. I've liked the creepy undertones of the dead children and ominous moments so far, and even the goofy kills were pretty entertaining. But after all that, the movie takes a full fucking detour to Wackyville, as the plot of the movie just corrodes in front of my very eyes. So first off, we start finding out that Mike's sister Abby has been drawing the ghost kids he's been seeing in his dreams the entire time. And I mean, why? It's not like she knew who her brother was before he went missing. She wasn't even born yet. Do the ghost kids enter anyone's dreams and just found her by coincidence. It just doesn't make much sense. So after Mike's babysitter isn't available to look after Abby since, you know, she's kind of dead, he decides to make the responsible decision to not just hire another babysitter since he's now been making money at the pizzeria, or even just resorting to having his aunt look after her, which he later ends up doing anyway. No, he decides to take her to the pizzeria that he's been having those creepy dreams in, where he literally got slashed open by one of the dead children in the dream world, which of course transfers to real life, which he doesn't really question during the movie, and as you'd expect, it doesn't end very well. And this is where the movie just completely loses me, as Abby starts hearing a voice in the middle of the night that's calling for her, goes to investigate without Mike, and then ends up playing with the cursed animatronics like she's having a fucking pizza party. And just when Mike intrudes and is about to be erased from existence by the mechanical unit that is Freddy, his sister stops them, basically saying, guys, stop here, he's with me. And they all become the best of pals just like that. Then Vanessa shows up like she's making a guest appearance in a shitty sitcom, and they all start building forts out of tables with animatronics. Like, what in the ever-living fuck is going on? 1 minute the movie is showcasing a super serious backstory about a kid's brother being abducted and other kids being murdered, and has the animatronics brutally murdering people in the pizzeria. Next thing you know, all the characters are as happy as can be, building forts and dancing. It's just so goofy. And as I said at the start of the review, I wouldn't mind that if the movie just stuck to it and embraced it. At least the movie would just be funny and enjoyable in that way. It would feel more like a comedy than a horror movie, but still, at least it's something. But instead it tries to do both, which just doesn't work for me at all. And after all that, the movie has the nerve to start getting serious again as the ghost of Freddy talks to Mike and offers to basically give him happy dreams of his fake family that aren't alive anymore, in return for his little sister's life, which at first he actually fucking agrees to, which has to be one of the most puzzling character decisions I've ever seen. What kind of shitty bottom of the barrel kind of deal is that? Then after briefly agreeing to the worst trade-off of all time and then quickly taking it back when he realizes how stupid it is, they decide to try and kill him, which he narrowly escapes. Then the animatronics go to get his sister anyway, which I'm sure they were going to do regardless. It just feels like such a pointless section in the movie to give him a choice like he has any control of the situation. Then that is topped off with a baffling scene where Freddy is at Mike's house ready to bring Abby back to the pizzeria. And I mean, I don't know how the fuck a whole £200 steel animatronic enters your home without you noticing. The aunt kind of deserved to get killed off at that point. Then Abby and the animatronic get back to the pizzeria in a fucking taxi. Like, at this point, I just don't even need to say anything. After all that, Mike is helped once again by Vanessa, who has honestly done fuck all in this movie other than mention she knows things without indulging on it in the slightest. She then reveals that William Afton is the killer behind it all and was also the man that abducted Mike's little brother, and that she's his daughter. What a shocker. And talking about shocks, she also tells Mike to use electricity on the animatronics to stun them as it's their main weakness, which is probably the only useful piece of information she's given Mike the entire movie, and even then it's just common sense. So Mike then goes to save his sister, taking out the animatronics with absolute ease, just to almost be beaten by Chica's cupcake. Then Vanessa appears just in time to save Abby from Foxy, and Mike faces the final boss, William Afton, who turns up in his gold bunny outfit for whatever reason, and reveals himself to be none other than Shaggy. I guess this is what no Scooby Snacks does to a man. So he reveals himself as the guy that gave him the job in the first place, absolutely annihilates Mike like he's the predetermined winner of a WWE fight, and stabs his daughter. Just in case you had any second thoughts about whether a man that murders kids and stuffs them in suits is evil. Also, during his fight with Vanessa, we found out that she was apparently supposed to be an accomplice to help him kill Mike, which if anything, she just done the complete opposite of throughout this movie, even before it made sense for her to eventually side with him. So I don't know. She's just useless at everything in this movie, I guess. Then Abby finishes off the movie by beating William Afton with a drawing. I wish I was joking. She draws William stabbing his children, puts it over the drawing of William holding hands with them, and then the animatronics suddenly go, "Oh yeah, you weren't nice to us. You actually brutally murdered us and stuffed us in these suits. I knew something was off with you, man." And then they just all gang up on him and make his suit spring locks all stab into him. And he slowly dies from his injuries like in the game, which makes so much more sense in the game's version, by the way, as the same thing happens, but he tries to hide in the suit, where he then succumbs to the spring locks. Instead of already being in the suit like it's his universal villain costume, then dying after the suit takes a hit. Like, why wouldn't he just take the spring locks out of the suit at that point? Or at least make the spring locks safer if he's going to insist on wearing it. So anyway, after all that, they manage to escape the pizzeria. Vanessa is alive, but in a coma. Not like anyone cares. And Mike and his sister are just happily having a meal like nothing happened, despite 5 people dying, including his aunt, who's probably still lying on his living room floor, making him the most obvious suspect of her death. But hey, I guess the police in this movie are more focused on visiting old abandoned restaurants for no reason, so I guess it doesn't really matter. So as you can see, the story of this movie is an absolute shit show. The movie starts off fairly well and then abruptly derails as it goes on. Like I said earlier on, I do like the introduction and backstory of the main character and how it introduces the pizzeria as the main focus, and there are a couple good cameos too, with Matt Pat being included, which you love to see, and honestly should be credited as the co-creator of the franchise at this point, and Corey Kenshin, who's the driver in the goofy taxi scene. So it's good to see some big creators who've supported the FNAF franchise being included in the film, although it is a big miss that Markiplier wasn't included at all. I will say, in the film's credit, it did look great. Like, the pizzeria looked really good, the animatronics were cool, and just the use of practical effects in general throughout this film was pretty impressive. And even just the way the movie was shot was really well done. It's just a shame the story was so horrendous. Also, the acting was pretty hit or miss. Josh Hutcherson in particular was quite disappointing at times, with some more dramatic scenes of him shouting being laughably bad, while Matthew Lillard was good as the more mysterious role of William at the start of the movie, but was pretty lackluster when he started playing the actual villain at the end. Despite my gripes with Vanessa as a character in the movie, plot-wise, I do think the actress put on a good performance, and I actually think the child actress that played Abby probably put on the best performance in the entire movie. Overall, I found Five Nights at Freddy's to be a pretty disappointing movie, and I'm just happy that I was no longer a massive fan of the franchise before watching it, because if so, I think I would have disliked it even more. But with that being said, if you watch the movie with your brain completely shut off and just don't think about anything that's happening with too much thought, you'll probably find some enjoyment from it, and at the very least find some scenes quite funny, despite most times not intending to be. But I can't say I was that surprised with what we eventually got with this movie. I rate the Five Nights at Freddy's movie 5 nights out of 10, and yes, that is my genuine score, not just a shitty pan. That's my thoughts on the movie. Hopefully any of you watching that have also seen it were able to enjoy it a lot more than I did. Like this video for more reviews on the channel like this, and hopefully I'll see you in another one.